and welcome to Building Solid Foundations Radio on KCAA 1050 AM 102.3 FM and 106.5 FM. Also catches on your favorite podcast platform, including Spotify, iHeart, Apple, Spreaker, and others. You can also catch us on Roku on the Building Solid Foundations channel or on YouTube on the Building Solid Foundations channel. Today, we have a fantastic guest in the studio. I've known her for quite a while, and you're going to learn a lot. This is Dr. Janice Bell. Dr. Janice Bell has a background in biotech. She is a research scientist. She has a real estate investing background after that, doing value-add rentals, both in and out of California. And she is involved in private lending, and she actually runs a club with that. We're going to talk about that journey, how she got there, and what it's all about. Welcome, Janice, to Building Solid Foundations.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
So, Janice, I've known you for a while. I believe at least 4 years now. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we both met in a real estate investors club.
Yes.
A local real estate investors club. Yeah. And we were doing very different things, but we found ways to collaborate. So I want to start with giving us your journey. How did you go from research science in the biotech field into doing real estate investing?
Oh, well, thanks for asking that, Steve. When I was working in academia and also in biotech, I had a couple rentals, just something I knew that would be good for the future to have these rentals. And they really weren't anything I knew about investing. I just kept the houses I used to live in when I moved to a new city, kept those as rentals.
So you didn't set out to go buy a place and fix it up and rent it out. You just lived in a place, and when you moved, instead of selling it, you rented it to someone else and created income out of it.
Absolutely. So I had regular, conventional loans that I had taken to buy the place myself. I kept those loans in place and just moved to my new location. And so I ended up with about 3 rentals while I was working.
Okay. And so that throws off a little extra cash flow, which is great. And at some point you shifted out of that business and went full-time into real estate. And how did that come about?
Well, like many of us, it comes about when life throws you curves. I was laid off. They laid off a whole bunch of people in 2003.
Okay.
2003, 2 and 3 in the biotech industry. The market had gone down, and the smaller biotechs couldn't raise capital because there really wasn't any capital on Wall Street to raise. And so they just sort of burned through their money, and then they started, laying people off. Okay.
So you got unceremoniously thrown out the door in 2003, but at that time, the real estate market was doing pretty good. So you took a shift, you had your 3 rentals, and you started expanding from there. Now, I know you had the ones you started, but you started buying other properties as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
So how did you decide what to start with there?
So I started by, from an academic background, read a book and figure it out. I read books and I realized not enough information here. And then I started going to real estate investing clubs. There's several here. We're in San Diego, so I went to a couple clubs and I listened to speakers. And at that time, speakers would come in and say, oh, we have properties in this state and that state. And so I started following certain speakers and deciding which markets to invest in, because San Diego was pretty pricey at the time.
And
it still is
pretty pricey. It depends how you compare it. So San Diego is definitely pricey compared to what it was. It's pricey compared to most of the country. It's not pricey compared to most of the rest of the coastal real estate along the California coastline, when you compare it to the Bay Area, Orange County, Los Angeles, Central Coast. So in that sense, it's kind of still a bargain, but it's all relative. So,
right, exactly.
Right? But it is something that you do need some money to get into. Now, you mentioned you did some reading because you're a research scientist, so you understand how to research. What kind of things did you read? What kind of information did you go after? Was this reports and technical publications, or were these over-the-shelf books from Barnes & Noble?
I went to the bookstores, Barnes & Noble, found the different books that were on the real estate investing. No Money Down, all those sort of classic books that I read. Lonnie Deal's How to Do Mobile Homes, a lot of different areas, but I wanted more guidance on that. So after I heard some of the speakers, then I started taking training and courses where you'd pay for, a weekend training or, several days during the week, maybe a 5-day. And I started, investing in my education and paying money to be educated so that I would make the right decisions.
And part of that education did not include going and getting a real estate license or a broker's license, correct?
No, I've never been licensed. One thing about being licensed is then you have to declare that you have that experience and license. I'm an investor, so I don't really need a license to be an investor. I'm a buyer.
Yeah, so there's a few things in the real estate investing world that seem counterintuitive. So my partner, who's in Florida, he's my business partner. You know who he is. He started back in the late 80s, and the first thing he did was go out and get his real estate license. And after he did a couple of deals, he realized really quickly it was actually more of a detriment than a benefit to what he was doing because of the fiduciary responsibilities you have and the disclosures you have to do. And so he actually sent his license back to Sacramento and said, forget it, take me off the list, please. And he's been working ever since in real estate without a license. Now, that doesn't mean that you should not look to licensed real estate agents out there. I do encourage anybody watching or listening to this to find experts that can advise you. And if that's a real estate agent, then do that. If that's a tax attorney, do that. If that's a transactional attorney, do that. If that's a CPA, do that. Find your expertise and educate yourself. But don't think that to get into real estate investing, you have to go get a license or brokers or a resale license, because most of the real estate investors I know, like Janice, don't have the licenses, but they work with licensed real estate agents quite often.
Absolutely, and don't get it confused with driving a car. I mean, you definitely need the license for that, but in real estate, you work with someone. Some people get it because they want access to the things on the MLS, the multiple listing service. However, remember that those are priced up because they have to include the commission for the real estate agent. So you're really looking as an investor for off-market properties. And it's not so much the house, it's can you solve a problem for the seller if you're in the buying mode. And also most agents residential agents think of a house, it has to be empty before you want it because they assume you're going to move in. So I've looked at small multifamilies that are listed by agents. Small would be under 5 units, 1 through 4. And they always say it will be delivered empty. And I'll say, wait, I don't want it empty.
I want renters.
I want to keep the tenants in
That's
there.
right.
I might move them out over time, but I need the cash flow, when I buy the property. So residential agents, most of them don't understand that. When you get to 5 and above units, then you're looking at usually a commercial agent would be listing those. They understand that it's an income-producing property.
At least 70% rental rate going on in order to sell that thing. That's what gives you the value, right?
Right, and also the bank won't qualify you for the loan if your vacancy rate goes too high during the loan process.
Right. So if you're buying, let's say, a 3 or 4-plex, and your intent is to use it as a rental, if you have long-term rental agreements with people in there and you take that to the bank when you're trying to get that loan, that actually carries a lot of weight as opposed to I've got empty buildings and I got to figure out how to fill them and get rent.
Right. You would get the lease from the current leases from the owner at that time. In fact, I did buy, some of the larger units. And when my first one with a 6 unit, it just happened that someone was moving out, and you start with 6 units, you only have so many units to work with in terms of their ratio. So they didn't want me to have less than 4 tenants in when I got the loan. So I made a contract on one of those deals with the owner, and I said, I'm going to put people into these ones as they turn over because I'm going to be the ones with those tenants at the end. So that was like a side contract. I started putting people into the property so that when I closed on the loan, I had a high enough ratio.
Yeah, and one of the things that we learn is going through the books, going to the clubs, taking the training, you learn what's not in the basic principles of real estate type classes or the real estate licensing exam stuff. And it's how to structure deals, how to be flexible, how to talk to people. Basically, you figure out you can do anything in any way as long as it's not illegal or immoral. And that's learning the creativity of it. And a lot of that training comes from those books. It comes from those seminars that are kind of outside the formal education system.
Right. Comes from listening to the older speakers who've structured deals many ways. You can write your agreement on a napkin, a piece of paper is preferable, but then you send it to escrow and they'll write up the contract. If you're licensed as an agent, you pretty much have to use the state form because of your responsibility to use those forms if you're the principal in the transaction.
And you have mandatory disclosures. Yeah, that's one of the things that, when we go out, we do the same thing you do, just larger land. And when we go out to acquire the land, same thing. It's usually unlisted, and we're talking to people, and we're talking creatively through what do you need? What helps your life be better? Whatever that is. And if that means we can give you some money up front, if that means we can take this burden off your hands, if that means you want to stay in a piece of it and get some cash flow at the back end, whatever it is, we can work with that. As an agent, sometimes your hands are tied because you can't always disclose all the different possible scenarios that are there, but you kind of have to by law to let them know what's going on. So it can actually work against you a little bit. Okay, so you now actually provide training to people. You've turned that around, and you actually offer masterminds. And there's a difference between training and masterminds. Training is you're educating people. Masterminds is you're collaborating and sharing among people actively involved. And so you've built yourself a big network. When we get from the break, I'm going to talk about your shift from just real estate investing into private lending and how that led to you starting your own club. Okay. So I do want to reiterate to everybody out there, find experts for whatever you do. If you're going to get involved in any of this stuff, it's going to affect your taxes. You're going to have legal obligations. You may not understand everything that's written in a contract. So find attorneys that can help you, find accountants that can help you, tax advisors that can help you, real estate agents that can help you, whoever it is that can help you navigate, especially if you're early on. And I do highly recommend getting involved in real estate investing clubs and associations they're places where you go find those people that have expertise. You don't have to just sift through Google and try to figure it out. We're going to have to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to finish with Janice Bell talking about her journey from science into real estate. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.